This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Tuesday, April 26, 2016. Yeah, it looks like maybe a little clipping there, but I just resolved it right now as we speak. And just browsing around on what's going on into the world, and just decided to do another improvise, adapt, and conquer episode. Is just one of those things I decided to do the last minute, but you know what? It's all good. But I'm just still kicking back in Fort Lauderdale. It's a nice, beautiful day, and the library, and a little crazy, typical crazies here and there. But that's how it goes when metropolitan communities. So, but it's all well and good. I am just mellowed out a little bit. Gotta take care of a few things later on tonight. However, it's a few things that came up, and it's interesting stuff that came here. And there's one thing, it caught my eye. I got like gonna do 4 articles right now. I just want to keep under an hour the best I can. So I try not to talk too much or digress, but I have those moments. And hey, I thank everyone for checking in. I've been getting listeners from Canada, China, South Africa, sometimes Germany, France, of course the United States, especially in Ashburn, Virginia. So I thank everyone for checking it out. And, please give me your reviews, comments, and all that good stuff. I'll give you all the information after the show before it ends. So, first thing that really caught my eye here is by Matt Agaris. I believe it came out yesterday from an activist post. This one's entitled, "White House admits that locking people in cages for victimless crimes is devastating to the economy." Oh, really? How astute of them. So, I didn't know Warden Cleaver knew that. Come on, give me a break. What do you think, we're from the world of Leave the Beaver and we're going to bow down to authority and government? This is not the show that pretends that truth, justice, and the goody two-shoes way will get you somewhere. Forget about it. So, that's what we got to say. White House admits that locking people in cages for victimless crimes is devastating to the economy. This is by Matt Agaris. As it says on Saturday, economists in U.S. President Barack Obama's administration released a report detailing the adverse effects on the economy derived from locking non-violent drug offenders and criminals behind bars. For decades, a guiding philosophy of authoritarians was that locking more people would result in less crime. This has created a prison state in the U.S., which represents 4.4% of the world's population. It houses 22% of the world's prisoners. Since 1980, the U.S. prison population has skyrocketed by nearly 5 times. However, the negative effects of such a totalitarian approach to drug crimes and other victimless offenses is having a staggering economic impact on the United States, according to a report by Reuters, which there are a link to that. Economists are of one mind that packed prisons, excessively long sentences, and insufficient rehabilitation programs are counterproductive to our economy as a whole, in addition to hurting the people involved. Jason Furman, chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, told reporters in a call on Friday. On Monday, administration officials, economists, business leaders, and scholars will discuss the council's findings at an event hosted by the White House, the American Enterprise Institute think tank, and New York University's Brennan Center for Justice. The United States can get greater economic benefit through investments in police, prisoner education, and job opportunities for ex-prisoners that it can from putting additional funding toward prisons, the council report said. So I know the CCA and Geo Group would have a cow, right? Over this. Well, I say piss on them for all I care, or deprecate them by any means. According to a recent study, the mass incarceration policy in America over the last 40 years has created more problems than it has solved. The longer the term served, the higher rate of re-convicted felons. Because many of them try to get jobs and so forth, and they got the finger or a slap in the face because they have a felony on their record, especially when it comes to victimless crime laws. So if you have like a bag of pot, they want to throw your ass for at least 12 years, allegedly, right? This is how they want to do it, to keep the tyrannical corporation going. And now, look what happened. The researcher from University of Michigan economics professor, Michael Muller-Smith, has proven that prison terms don't rehabilitate a criminal and turn them into a law-abiding citizen. The U.S. Penal Policy just doesn't appear to be working. The criminal world is expanding despite more and more criminals being incarcerated and isolated from society. The American practice of imprisoning people for even the most trivial offenses not only ruins lives but tends to act as a college for crime. Up to 75% of former prisoners are rearrested within 5 years of their release date. Yeah, because you got the police system. They're gonna say get those quarters going and arrest as many people as possible. Check. Look, any questions? Check on some of the videos and a book called Arrest Proof Yourself by Dale Carson. He could tell you for a fact. Revolving door of creating and processing criminals fosters a phenomenon known as recidivism. Recidivism is a fundamental concept of criminal justice illustrating the tendencies of those who are processed into the system and the likelihood of future criminal behavior. The impetus behind the mass incarceration in America is the war on drugs. The illegality of drug possession and use is what keeps the lower level users and dealers in and out of the court systems. And most of these people are poor black men. As Dr. Ron Paul has pointed out time and time again, black people are more likely to receive a harsher punishment for the same drug crime as a white person. So all those chumps out there that said Dr. Ron Paul is a racist, egg on your face. That's what happens when you listen to all the garbage from these yahoos who don't give a damn about you. You're like, okay, boss, yeah, they're right. So get out of that herd-conformed mentality. The war on drugs takes people and turns them into criminals every single minute of it, every single day. The system set up is in such a way that it fans the flames of violent crime by essentially building a factory that turns out violent criminals. Calling it rehabilitation is a sick joke, as a mere act of locking someone in jail for victimless crime is almost a guarantee they will never be able to enter the workforce again. When drugs are legalized, crime and gang violence drop drastically. Not only does it have a huge effect on the localized gangs in America, but the legalization of drugs is crippling violent foreign drug cartels too. Until Americans educate themselves on the cause of this violence, uninformed and corrupt lawmakers will continue to focus on controlling the symptoms. We will see more senseless killings and more innocent lives stripped of opportunity by getting entangled in the system. Matt Argus is the co-founder of the Free Thought Process, which was there originally. And he's a Marine and a former intelligence operation directly tasked by NSA. Interesting there. And the whole thing is, my friends, if you study the history of the prohibition of alcohol, which is an 18th Amendment, it did not benefit anyone. It did not drop down crime. It organized the organized crime benefited from it. It really did. And this is why I always tell people about no victim, no crime. And in addition, you got everyone out there got to really study history and share this with everybody, including your servants, elected servants. I don't hate using officials because to me that's blasphemy as far as I'm concerned. And this is why the CCA, the GEO group, like to manage certain prisons and private firms, private managerial systems. They don't want you to know this. They think you're dumb, stagnant, and pathetic. All right. In addition, I always stress this. Okay, jury nullification. No victim, no crime. They don't want you to know that, but I say it. Okay, people still gotta practice that, exercise it, and remember one thing, friends: action conquers fear. We all get nervous when we do these things. It's okay. It's a natural reaction. However, the more you learn, the more you get enlightened, the more you laugh at them, and share the information. Become the rabbi, the teacher, and say victimless crime laws are a monumental lie. Who benefits from it? Totalitarian corporations. Plain and simple, no ifs, ands, or buts. If you support this, then you're part of the problem. Fight these SOBs. Every single person can do it. And remember what Thomas Jefferson says: a little rebellion now and then is good. And I also always say to myself, the demoniac resistance is the key to vision, to liberation. So, and I am digressing, and I do apologize for that. But I have to get my point across. And please, folks, everyone can do their part, whether it's the United States, Canada, doesn't matter, the world. I know I got people from China listening to the show too, which I'm pretty amazed. And it takes time, I guess, But you know what? But the whole thing is, gotta stop being afraid. We got the Ninth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, enumerated rights. In other words, our natural-born rights are inalienable. And look at your state constitutions as well. Declaration of Rights, Bill of Rights. It's self-explanatory, null and void, and these stupid, pathetic laws cannot supersede our natural-born rights. And I'm saying that in an adult matter. Okay, free-willed individuals. And that's enough said about that. And interesting here came from personalliberty.com, but Brandon Smith, I haven't really done anything from him recently, and he has some good articles here. And this one here is called One More Casualty of the 9/11 Farce, the Petrodollar, is by Brandon Smith. As it says here, it's been about 15 years now since Pastor's plane struck the World Trade Center on towers on 9/11, and we're still suffering the consequences of that day, though perhaps not in the ways many Americans might believe. The 9/11 attacks billed by the Bush administration as a wake-up call for the U.S. and neocons called it the new Pearl Harbor. But instead of being an awakening, the American public led further into blind ignorance. The event launched wars throughout the Middle East, energized by a strike-first doctrine, which is supposed to bring unprecedented democracy to the region. Democracy. The United States is not a democracy. People get this out of their heads. Instead, the Middle East has now become as unstable as it was during World War II. The penchant for Western governments to find and train terrorist groups is now a verifiable mainstream fact rather than being considered conspiracy theory as was the common accusation back in 2001. Pentagon papers outlining support the formation of ISIS are available for anyone to read. This only disconnect that the public seems to suffer from is that unorthodox Republicans fail to recognize that the support for Islamic terrorism has just been as prevalent under Republican President al-Qaeda as has been under Barack Obama. And Democrats refuse to recognize that Barack Obama has been guilty of all the same criminal foreign policies they used to protest under George W. Bush. So, to the partisan Mickey Mouse clubs, there were Democrats and Republicans, you guys are like hurricane conformists who let the cows out. Moo. I won't say all, but a great amount. An example of the herd conformity 101. And we'll proceed. There has been substantial economic consequences as well. The Iraq War alone is estimated to cost us around $2 trillion, with billions more in veteran benefits forthcoming. These numbers, of course, stop accounting for costs after 2010, when the war was deemed officially over. Costs continue to this day as the U.S. maintains its military presence in the region, along with thousands of private contractors we rarely ever hear about. All hail the empire, hail Caesar, hail Caesar. All right. The U.S. official's national debt in 2001 was around $6 trillion. Today, the national debt has grown to more than $19 trillion. This astonishing debt accumulation is now only partially due to combat operations in the Middle East. However, one must also consider the amount of interest owed on debt occurred. Yeah, thank you, Federal Reserve. You are beautiful. There also has been numerous socio-political consequences post 9/11, including as a never-expanding police-state mentality, which is reaching critical mass, and the inevitable outcome would be open totalitarianism in the name of security and rebellion in response. Including after 15 years of disastrous policies, it is time to admit that the U.S. response to 9/11 has damaged us far more than the actual attacks ever could. The road to tyranny. Many of us in the Liberty Movement have studied the circumstances surrounding 9/11 extensively, including evidence indicating either government complicity in the attacks or outright participation. Such a discussion is beyond the scope of this particular article, but I highly recommend anyone skeptical of U.S. government involvement in 9/11 to look into scientific data collected by architects and engineers for 9/11 truth, as you see if your assumptions are not rattled. And I would recommend that too as well. And I will just say this, in good faith. A person like myself have been a 9/11 truther since September 14th, 2001. Not to toot my horn, my friends, but I just had to examine the elements, especially the solutions. I will proceed. Interestingly, the 9/11 truth movement may be partially vindicated in the near term as debate rages over the release of the redacted and classified documents tied to the original government-led investigation into 9/11. The problem is the release of these documents is just as calculated as the original cover-up. The fact that the involvement of the Saudi Arabian government in the events of 9/11 has suddenly hit the mainstream media this year is probably not a coincidence. Of course not. We all, a bunch of us know, and you people heard my past episodes, they're just part of the one world order umbrella. As I outlined in my article, the global economic reset has begun. The U.S. economy has been protected since the credit crisis of 2008 by three pillars, and each of these pillars is now being systematically demolished. The first pillar was fiat stimulus and quantitative easing. This pillar was removed through the Federal Reserve's taper program. I can dream about it. Don't printing money out there will make me be rich. Yeah, that's right. The second pillar was used of near zero interest rates to funnel cheap or free money through overnight loans to banks and corporations, which they turn use in a long cycle of stock buybacks. This pillar is now being removed through interest rate hikes by the Fed, and stock buybacks will be dead before 2016 is over. The third and final pillar holding up the U.S. economy is the dollar's world reserve status. The dominance of the dollar around the world is a primary currency used in international trade. The world reserve status allows America to maintain extreme levels of debt creation and protects us partially from fiat hyperinflation. Because so many dollars are needed by overseas governments and corporations for international trade, the Federal Reserve has been able to perpetuate massive stimulus programs without all the money created immediately burying the U.S. system, as what happened in Weimar Germany. That the 1920s to be exact, from 1922 to 1928, folks. Check it out yourself. The fall of the Reichsmark. The problem is, if the dollar ever loses the world reserve status, the unknown amounts of dollars created by the Fed and held overseas will be coming flooding back to destroy the illusion of our currency value. The dollar's world reserve status is highly dependent on the fact that this is the petrocurrency. The vast majority of oil purchases around the planet are made only in dollars. In fact, most oil-producing nations will not sell their stocks unless dollars are used. The dollar has enjoyed this awesome advantage primarily because of the relationship between the U.S. government and Saudi Arabia. For now, Saudi Arabia is still the larger holder of oil production market share in the world. This market share has been declining somewhat recently due to falling global demand and more specifically falling U.S. demand, which has led more vicious competition from other producing nations including Russia and Iran. Falling U.S. demand by itself has perhaps led OPEC nations to question the continued validity of the dollar as a petrol currency. In November of 2015, the Saudi government hinted at the possibility that they might depeg from the U.S. currency entirely. This act alone would essentially destroy the dollar's petrol status. The conundrum facing the Saudis was increasingly low and unstable oil prices, to which the petrodollar adds a level of uncertainty. Mainstream analysis argue that Saudi Arabia may be forced to choose either cut production to increase prices or end the dollar peg and stabilize prices by switching to a basket of currencies instead. Special drawing rights anyone. Obviously, after the engineered absurdity at the Doha meeting this month, there is absolutely no chance in hell that Saudi Arabia will commit to any substantial cuts in oil production. In fact, the Saudis have just announced that they may expand oil fields in order to increase production to even greater historical levels. So oil prices are going to remain low for now and will probably fall exponentially if a battle for the market shares between Iran, Russia, and Saudi Arabia goes nuclear. As I have predicted, this would suggest that the Saudis will end the peg to the dollar within the next couple of years. As I wrote in my article, economic crisis goes mainstream. What happens next? An old An oil price panic could lead to conflict between Saudi Arabia and the U.S. and disrupt the petrodollar. And this would precipitate the fall of the dollar's world reserve status, meaning the globalists will get exactly what they want: the death of dollar dominance and the rise of the SDR system under the IMF as a prelude to global currency and global economic governance. However, another catalyst from left field may be needed. A sort of black swan event entered the 28-page secret chapter of the 9/11 congressional inquiry. Supposedly, the documents are in a bombshell linking that Saudi government directly to the 9/11 hijackers and exposing their aid to said terrorists. Despite Obama's supposed peace offerings to Saudis, the White House is still said to be poised to release these documents to the public in the near term. The Saudis have responded with extreme anger and have openly threatened to dump their $750 billion in U.S. Treasury holdings if the documents ever see the light of day. This would invariably end the Saudi peg to the dollar and thus end the dollar's petro status, which would then expedite at the end of the dollar's world reserve status. It would be a catastrophe. The setup is perfect. The Liberty Movement gets some vindication that there was indeed a conspiracy surrounding 9/11, but the true scope of that conspiracy remains hidden as the Saudis take the brunt of the blame. The Saudis get an opportunity to hand them on a silver platter to kill the petrol peg, an action they have been planning for quite some time anyway. The U.S. government then becomes partly responsible in the public eye for the opening door to the destruction of the dollar and process which the globalists as the International Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve have been planning for decades. Then the IMF can swoop in post-crisis with an SDR blanket system to replace the dollar's world reserve structure. When we have an immense global economic change triggered by the 28-page document, but predicated on years of careful staging, planning, and choreography. Once again, the globalists have conjured a theatrical circus which may use to end the American economy as we know it. We still have to wait to see if the 9/11 documents are released and if the Saudis follow through with their threats. Such a move would certainly serve the interests of the international elites in the long run. So it's like a divide and rule game by the IMF, the One World Order, Federal Reserve. Doesn't matter how you look at it. It's going to be very interesting, my friends. And like I said before, and I'm pretty consistent, the Saudis, criminal elements in the Saudi regime, yeah, they're a part of it, but they weren't the masterminds as far as I'm concerned when it comes to 9/11. They're just under the same umbrella. We get a big list of how many people are involved, including the ones in the United States government as well, and possibly the CIA, allegedly. But we go a little bit more further with the oligarchs, but we don't know exactly who they are. But everyone else in between, they're getting exposed. So, and I know too, if this ever happens, you just got to prepare ourselves. Okay, don't get caught with your pants down. But we got to prepare ourselves. We need to start being more self-reliant, like even a local community level. Okay, do the trades, have support constitutional tender acts. Okay, I think they have they have the Utah Constitutional Tender Act, which is about gold and silver for certain things, which is a great start. I think every other state in the union needs to start doing that as well. That's why in the last government election, Adrian Wiley, they may call him a nut job, but he did support that as well. But the Dinkleberries from both sides, I call them the Glamour Twins, and their supporters, Rick Scott, Rick Scott and his flip-flopping Glamour twin brother, Charlie Crist, don't want to talk about because you know what? Because they're a bunch of yahoos, all right? And I say that in good faith. So this is why you have to, got to really look at the bigger picture. And I prefer have everyone look at the whole architects and engineers from 9/11 Truth because they do a nice little job. There's a lot of questioning that hasn't been answered. And I still believe in an honorable, true investigation of that horrific event Because remember, doesn't matter what you believe in, we became more of a totalitarian nation, and the world is suffering from it as well, as it's 9/11, the 24/7 excuse for everything. So we gotta say hell no to that, and we gotta keep forward. Let's be self-contained and let these bastards know you need us more we need them. We all can't be enslaved from these vultures. That's all I have to say about that. Next one here came from the New Eastern Outlook. Is by Martin Berger. It says here, would career criminal Killary Clinton pose a threat to the world? As it reads, in the faster situation in Libya deteriorates and the stronger ISIS becomes in this war-torn land, the more people asking who's responsible for this nightmare in order to avoid a repetition of such a scenario in the future. According to various Western experts, the actions taken by the United States, NATO, and the Gulf monarchies against Libya in 2011 constitutes a war crime, no matter how you define the term. As a result, hundreds of people, thousands perished, including a massacre targeted dark-skinned Libyans and immigrants from other African countries in particular. Entire cities were turned to rubble by American terrorist proxies. President Muammar Gaddafi was murdered by these forces, who could only have succeeded in this crime with Western financial military support. The American-led military intervention in Libya resulted in devastation of this nation, which to this day still be ravaged by violence. Libya has no government, has become a safe haven for ISIS terrorists. It is curious that ISIS has achieved the most in Iraq, Libya, and Syria, which were targets of Western regime change. In a bid to find those responsible for this mayhem, the Huffington Post would note Hillary Clinton's support for regime change in countries such as Iraq, Syria, and Libya, Iran, and Honduras. Thousands of Americans died in the Iraq War, and many more were wounded. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and Syrians have died, and millions have been wounded or displaced. And President Obama has said specifically the mess in Libya was his worst mistake, in which Clinton played a decisive role. Hey, I'm pretty impressed. One shouldn't downplay the crucial role Hillary Clinton played in Honduras following the 2009 military coup, when the military kidnapped the democratically elected president in his pajamas and flew him out of the country. The then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton did everything she could possibly do to make the military coup in Honduras succeed by legitimizing the coup, even with the pro-Western forces violently cracking down on the media and the opposition, notes the Huffington Post. And all those people go, I'm ready for Hillary. I'm ready for Hillary. You hate freedom. You're just a bunch of tyrannical Uncle Tom and Jemimas. I'm being sarcastic. I'm sorry. The respective alternative media source, Global Research, would go to a step further by claiming Hillary Clinton is quite rightly taking the heat for being the U.S. undermine of this atrocity. As Secretary of State, she made the case for the American nightmare. She was quite proud of this evil achievement and infamously said, "We came, we saw, he died." Of course, these machine nations were the cause of blowback in 2012 when jihadists killed the American ambassador at Benghazi. Hillary Clinton is the villain in the story, and there was any justice in the world, Barack and Hillary would fear being on trial. Instead, he leaves office, and they work together to make sure that she sits in the Oval Office after him. But they will work hand in hand like the political twins they've always had been. In turn, Counterpunch is not shy either of labeling Hillary Clinton in the Queen of Chaos and War Goddess, while noting that from Asia to Latin America, her record has been scrutinized to oblivion. The support for the Contras in Nicaragua, support for NATO bombings of former Yugoslavia, support for the 2003 shock and awe invasion and destruction of Iraq, and support for Operation Enduring Freedom. Then, as Secretary of State, her war of turning Libya into a divided and destroyed nation failed. State, excuse me. In 2009, the military coup in Honduras, and finally, the support for violent regime change in Syria. In his article written for Counterpunch, the well-known, well-respected American economist and publicist Paul Craig Roberts asked the following questions. Would the world survive President Hillary Clinton? He argues that if Americans don't recognize the fact that Hillary Clinton has been an instigator of numerous wars, they would end up with a restless warmonger heading up a militarist state. Considering the extraordinary destructive force of nuclear weapons, Hillary Clinton as president could mean the end of life on Earth. As Paul Craig Roberts goes on, he notes, Hillary has survived the bombing of Libya, her creation of a failed Libyan state that is today the major source for terrorists, has survived charges that as Secretary of State she arranged favors of foreign interests in exchange for donations to the Clinton Foundation. She is under investigation for misuse of classified data, an offense for which a number of whistleblowers are in prison. Bill and Hillary Clinton epitomized the use of public office in behalf of the officers' holders' interests. The Wall Street Journal reported that at least 60 companies that lobbied the State Department during her tenure as Secretary of State donated a total more than $26 million to the Clinton Foundation. According to the International Business Times, under Hillary Clinton, the State Department approved $165 billion worth of commercial arms sales to 20 nations, whose government has given millions to the Clinton Foundation. That's right, folks. You want to talk? You want that scum queen witch to be president? I would take a dump on your lap. That's how I feel about it. Under these circumstances, the American conservative feels entitled to warn the world of the possible dangers it can encounter should Hillary Clinton become the U.S. president, since her distinguishing feature as an avid support of every U.S. military intervention over the last 25 years, which makes her more militaristic Democratic candidate since Lyndon Johnson. You know what B stands for? Backstabber. That was his middle name, by the way. Middle initial Bane. I call it Backstabber. There's little doubt that there is a long list of ruthless client states that will be pleased with Clinton victory. Hawks everywhere will be reassured that there is once again an American president that would be eager to launch unprovoked military interventions everywhere without any pretense of caution. However, the rest of the world should be resenting and fearing the unreasonable manifestation of the American power that Hillary Clinton advocates. And this is why, my friends, this woman needs to be thrown in prison. She is nothing more than a Jezebelian harlot to the New World Order. And those Clinton supporters don't like it, too bad. I don't give a damn what you think, because that is a fact. And deep down inside, you know I'm right. She's been using the unions, the AFL-CIO, to get her way. And I would ask the people who are union that supports Hillary Clinton, did you ever ask her for her union card? As far as I'm concerned, she don't really give a damn about you guys at all. She's trying to use every single person, including the LGBT community. So get your heads out of your rear ends and stop being diagnosed with the Jim Jones syndrome, because Killary Clinton's husband and daughter are members of the Council of Foreign Relations. Look it up. William Jefferson Clinton and Chelsea Clinton, members of the Council of Foreign Relations, CFR.org. I probably posted stuff in the past, but you guys I know you folks can do the research. This woman is unacceptable, a blasphemous piece of trash. And one lying Jezebel or Medusa, okay? Looks like an overgrown Muppet-style Medusa without the snakes on her head. That's how I feel about this woman. Pure, unnecessary garbage. If you don't like it, you know what to do. Because I'm going to keep on going until they shut me down. So, I got to take that off my chest. So, forgive me, some of my people. But, a lot of them understand I do it on principle. And people that know me for a long time, I have friends of mine that know me for a long time, understand that completely, where I'm coming from. I have merit to back it up. All right. Finally, it's from The Intercept. And it says here, Brazilian cybercrime bills threaten open internet for 200 million people. 1 year and 1 day after Freddie Gray succumbed to the spine injury he received during a 45-minute drive in a police van. What? Hold on here. Interesting. One moment. Hopefully I'm doing this right here. Let's find out. Sorry about that. It's by Andrew Fishman. Oh yeah, right here. Okay, thanks. It says here, "Ah, Brazilian internet freedom activists are nervous. On Wednesday, a committee in the lower house of Congress, the Câmara dos Deputados, to vote on several proposals ostensibly created to combat cybercrime. Critics argue the combined effect will be substantially restrict open internet in the country by peeling back the right of the anonymity and providing law enforcement with doctrine powers to censor online discourse and examine citizens' personal data without judicial oversight. 1984. Okay, they probably read the Patriot Act. Oh yeah, we can do this too. The bills are ripped straight from what has become a standard international playbook. Proposed legislation to combat cybercrime invoke child pornography, hackers, organized crime, and even terrorism, then slip in measures that almost make it easy to identify critical voices online, often without judicial oversight, and either mute them or throw them in jail for defamation. Direct threats to free speech. Pakistan, Nigeria, Mexico, Kuwait, Kenya, the Philippines, Peru, the United States, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar have all seen similar proposals recently. Some were met with strong resistance and got shelved. Some are still pending, and others made it into law. Cybercrime is one of the recurring excuses for creating overboard legislation which places control on internet activity. Katiz Katiza Rodriguez. Sorry about that if I mispronounce it. International Rights Director at the Electric Frontier Foundation wrote an email to The Intercept. In Brazil, the proposal on the result of a 9-month-long parliamentary commission of inquiry on cybercrimes, referred as C C C Cyber, created in July 2015 by House President Indira Chunha at request of a congressman from President Dilma Rousseff's ruling Workers' Party, which is PT. First draft of the report, released on March 30th, provoked a massively negative response from civil society groups. The Brazilian press has not dedicated much coverage to this story. Reporters have their hands full with the month-long political crisis currently enveloping the nation. But the Folha de Sao Paulo, a major national newspaper, published an editorial on Saturday arguing that the proposal used a pretext increased security online to increase the power to censor the web and diminish users' privacy. According to Folha, the provisions attack the pillars of the Marco Civil Internet, a statute enacted in 2014 which put Brazil at the vanguard on the issue of internet rights. The paper concluded that this type of control used by countries such as China and Iran. One particular controversial proposal, however, requires social networks to remove content deemed offensive to the honor of politicians within 48 hours of receiving official notification. After public outcry, that section was removed from the second version of the report, but other proposals remain that would force companies to take down prohibited user-generated content, including those deemed to be crimes against honor and other injuries, without unique judicial order. The CP report contains several proposed bills with 20 specific suggestions in all. Among its provisions, it would also allow for internet users such as WhatsApp or Facebook to be unilaterally blocked by a judicial officer, a violation of net neutrality. This actually happened in December of last year when a judge shut down nationwide access to WhatsApp to pressure its parent company Facebook to cooperate in a criminal investigation. Requires service providers to grant law enforcement access without judicial order to IP addresses. A device unique online fingerprint that can be used to help identify, geolocate a user and reveal a certain browsing history. Divert 10% of public funds originally designated to improve desperately underfunded and overpriced national telecom services and infrastructure to law enforcement agencies. Expand the scopes and penalties for laws involving hacking and unauthorized access to data, including the criminalization of improper access that risk misuse or disclosure, whether or not such misuse actually occurred or involved criminal intent. Gustavo Gus, co-founder of CryptoWave, a crowd-funded hacker conference in Sao Paulo, has followed the CP Cyber hearings closely. The police judiciary and the Brazilian authorities have not been happy with Silicon Valley's response to the Snowden revelation. He wrote in an email, since the cybercrime CPI was announced, there has been a lot of pressure from these sectors to increase data retention and expand authorities for mass surveillance, he wrote. Civil society groups have been suggesting changes since the first draft of the report was issued. Now the third draft is due to be unveiled and go to a committee vote on Wednesday. If approved, it will then go to a full vote in the lower house of Congress, and if it passes, to the Senate. We're trying to create a dialogue for the final version of the report, and we have to try to work together and make it better. Joanna Varon, director of Coding Rights, a group that promotes human rights in the digital arena, told The Intercept. But a lot of times our proposal is, please abandon this idea. The Intercept reached out to the committee and its chair, Deputy Marina Garavallo, for comment, but did not receive a response. 48 civil society groups and academic centers, such as Electronic Frontier Foundation, Article 19, Access Now, Intervoz, and the Institute for Technology and Society of Rio de Janeiro, have joined Coding Rights to combat the proposed legislation. In a letter to the members of the CP Cyber, Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, said he was saddened by the package, adding, allowing law enforcement to identify people associated with IP addresses without a warrant would threaten privacy online, creating a chilling effect for freedom of speech and with the knock-on effects for business and democracy. Deputy Daniel Coelho, a member of the CP Cyber, has sharply refuted such arguments in a tweet. Coelho responded to an article from the leading think tank titled "Politicians Want to Censor the Internet in Brazil with the Excuse of Fighting Cybercrime," saying, "What a ridiculous lie this article it is. None of this exists." A Varnon and many other colleagues, the CP Cyber proposals are especially difficult to accept after having spent years working with government officials to patch together a Marco Civil the Internet. An innovative piece of legislation that Varnon calls the Magna Carta of the Internet. It provides clear regulatory framework and lays out a broad series of digital rights for all Brazilians, much of the right to affordable broadband access and the right to free speech. It was produced through an open and inclusive dialogue. The package was widely heralded by Internet freedom advocates around the world, despite some serious reservations about such things as including mandatory retention of user logs by service providers. Since then, elements of Brazil's political class have been trying to chip away at some of the newly established rights. The CP Cyber report is the fruit of the strong conservative weave that has taken over our Câmara dos Deputados, says Varon. And when this wave hits the Internet, it results in censorship and surveillance. This is a backslide. In the last year, a controversial anti-terrorism law was passed into law by a president who was once herself imprisoned for being a terrorist during the military regime, and a bill debated late last year that will grant sweeping domestic digital espionage powers is waiting to be dusted off the shelf. EFF's Catiza Rodriguez warns once one bad bill is adopted in one country, they can spread further in other countries, a domino effect. Matched to this frustration of governments around the world with their inability to control encrypted communication services. And you create an environment where the country feels entitled to block not just websites, but the entire services. Therein is worry too. If the cybersecurity debate is led by a conservative vision, she says, when we end up criminalizing everything, saying that we're all terrorists, taking common practices and criminalizing them because we don't understand how the internet works, is problematic. And they are absolutely correct. You gotta, and I can say this: they do, if I'm correct, the Brazilian Constitution, you do have that free speech. It has to be honored. What they're doing is trying to use the terrorist terminology as a fear factor in Brazil. This is like part of the Ebenezer's playbook propaganda. I know I repeat that a few times, but people in Brazil got to fight this, and everyone in the world has to fight certain bills pertaining to this matter because this is totally ludicrous, uncalled for, unacceptable. But the truth of the matter is, my friends, they want us to be controlled because, like they said before, they think of us as whore bags, demonids, peasants, slaves, etc. So people in Brazil, my brothers and sisters out there, fight this damn bill. I boldly endorse it. Fight it. Fight it for your own well-being. I oppose this stuff, but I am not a citizen in Brazil, but I can speak for them when it comes to freedom as a whole, because your rights are natural born. You're not owned by the government. They want you to believe you should kiss the floor. They walk in, I say to hell with them. So folks, down there, got to fight this. And any other bills you see in the world, including the United States, we got to take off the gloves and duke it out with them. That's how we got to do it. And that is all. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this show. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, compliments, criticisms, love letters, hate letters, it doesn't matter. Or you have an idea or recommendation I should check out. Whatever you do, please send your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Freedoms Network, and Scene.life. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3, whose number 3 is altogether at gmail.com. Before I go, I'm going to play a cool little song. I tried to download a couple of stuff, and it hasn't really worked out. So it's another song from Agnostic Front. I think this could really pertain to what's going on in this article, social justice. It's time to bring these criminals in prison, as far as I'm concerned, because they think they're special because, we're a politician, we can do whatever we want. No. It's backfiring. They're all walking around bare naked. Things are happening, my friends, so whatever you do, keep pushing. Don't give up. Don't complain. Laugh at them. Ridicule them. Because you know why? Like I always say before in my past shows, they need you more, we need them. Okay? Always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you. You have a great day. Goodbye.
Social justice.